detectives have a way of being when it comes to investigation. This guy, it's all like learning is everything to him. So, it almost makes him gleeful. I don't know if I come across as gleeful, but that's certainly how it feels.
Well, Jesse, it is so nice to meet you.
Absolute pleasure to meet you as well.
I'm such a big fan of The Irrational, so I'm so excited to get to talk to you. First of all, congrats on already being renewed for a second season.
Thank you. Isn't that a great thing to happen? I mean, I can't tell you how excited everybody was, especially the crew. I mean, everybody had been out of work for a while, because of the strike and how much time that took to sort out. And now people are coming back and they're like, we have a solid place to be, a place to call home for a little while. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, procedurals have become so mainstream. I mean, it's a format that viewers have enjoyed for decades. So what do you find most unique about the way The Irrational approaches the genre?
Well, as you probably know, and certainly some of our audience members knows, I'm no stranger to procedural. Got sort of cut my teeth in the television landscape, and one of the most famous procedurals ever, Law and Order. And the big difference for at least me and maybe for the audience is, how we approach these stories. We're not sort of the ripped from the headlines world. We're certainly telling current stories, based on current events. But for me, it is how much I can emotionally invest in a world where before now I wasn't really that guy. As a stern detective on Law and Order, was sort of just a facts man. And, I had to sort of play those, stories, very sort of close to the vest, keep myself sort of professional in my work. In this one, yes, there's a modicum of professionalism, but he's not a detective. He's not bound by a badge. He's bound by science and education and, learning, which is way broader when it comes to me as an actor, being able to use emotion and my own, personality to flesh these stories out. So it is a huge blessing. It's one of the reasons I took the role because, I'm not a detective, but yes, doing a lot of investigation, which I'm used to. That's my wheelhouse. But the idea of being the guy who not only, invests himself emotionally in all these stories, but I'm able to take it back to a classroom and teach others.
Well, kind of on that same note, do you feel like that you have learned anything about human behavior through Alec's observation?
It's great that you asked that because so many people have been asking me that. And, I think I'll have a better more astute answer, the more I get into it. But what I can say that I've learned so far is I've learned how much I already knew about observation. And I could probably say to you that you'd probably feel the same way, where all your life you're looking at people, all your life you're looking at behavior, if only to just make a social situation happen. And, what I'm learning now is like, things that I've always done, even as an actor, our jobs is to be observant, to, like look at behavior, replicate it. I learned that I've been doing that all my life. Now it's just my job to do it. And there's like scientific terms that say what I'm seeing, you know what I mean? So, that's the part that makes me feel smart because suddenly there's a term for it. But the truth is, it feels just like any human who spends their lives around other humans. You've been observing all your life. It's how people learn.
Well, I was also thinking about how, I mean, you came off of 7 years of The Flash and you jumped right into The Irrational. So
Sure.
I was curious, were you able to adjust quickly to a new series regular role, or did it maybe take some time to switch your mindset?
I think probably the best thing that happened, when you talk about an actor working on a show, particularly a long-term show, is, it's going to sound funny, but it's probably better that I didn't have so much of a break. Like I moved right into, another situation, another set, another crew, where, I didn't have a chance to sort of sit back and, lose those muscles that, get you up at 5 o'clock in the morning, to tell these fantastic stories. So I was revving already when I got there. So I think that actually helped me. Completely different character, of course. But, I was, I was, you know, I had my pre-workout, if you will.
He obviously has this trauma and a lack of closure relating to it that's been simmering beneath the surface all season. So how did you want Alec to come across to the audience, given everything he has going on internally?
I didn't have a notion of how I wanted him to come across to the audience. I had a notion of how I wanted to dive in. One of the things that really attracted me to the role is certainly I have a mind for, as far as an actor goes, for investigation, because I've had plenty of experience doing that in the television landscape. But in this case, I'm not there with a badge. I'm there just with, my education and, a university behind me, helping me fund, experiments and, my teachings and my work. And that sort of set me free emotionally, where suddenly, this guy can be flawed. This guy can, have emotions. This guy can investigate, talk to people like a real person. Detectives have a way of being when it comes to investigation. This guy, it's all like learning is everything to him. So, it almost makes him gleeful. I don't know if I come across as gleeful, but that's certainly how it feels.
Well, on another note, I love the research assistants. I love the stories that they have both with and outside of Alec. What do you feel they add to Alec's investigations and the series as a whole?
First of all, let's give a shout out to the actors, Rashta Maxey and Molly Kunst. They're fantastic people and fantastic actors. And what I absolutely love is one of the reasons I really love the show, and I hope it's something that we continue, is me going out into the field, learning, investigating, always leads back to a lesson with them. And one of the fantastic things that happens with those characters and those actors is that I can be the teacher and the professor all day long and think I'm teaching them a lesson. But what happens on our show quite often is they teach me. And I think that is a symbiotic relationship that probably every teacher in the world has. And I'm super grateful that our writers picked up on that. I'm super grateful that these actors see it that way. And we all have something to give to each other. And I'm lucky to have the actors that we have so we can play that out. It's my favorite part of the show.
Well, we also got to talk about episode 7 because Alec and Rose go on a date. Obviously, they get along very well when it comes to solving cases. So I'm curious how you feel they may or may not be compatible outside of solving these mysteries.
I don't pretend to be an intellectual myself, but look, what I imagine in my head is like two people who are quite intellectual. How do they get together? Like, what really gets to them? What really turns them on, if you will? And the way that it's been written for us is like the perfect date in my mind for intellectuals. Like, they signed NDAs to sit with each other for 24 hours. I was also quite fortunate to have Karen David as the actor playing Rose, because our banter, our back and forth was fantastic. And I have this big fantasy that is the perfect intellectual date, and that would be everything to them. So, I can imagine the people living their entire lives that way. And that may be a fantasy, but that's how I saw it.
That also brings up the question of whether Joe is emotionally ready to move on, given everything that has happened with his ex-wife. So what are your thoughts on his current headspace there?
We all have learned breakups are hard, right? Breakups are really, really difficult, particularly, long-term marriages. And if there was ever love there, which there was in this case between Alec and Marissa, I don't think that love ever goes away. It changes, it ebbs, it flows, which is fantastic for storytelling and fantastic for our trajectory as a show. But there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain there. And then one of the remarkable things about Marissa, my ex-wife, played by Mara Hill, is I am the expert on everyone else's behavior. She's the expert on mine. And I have to reckon with that. And it may have been a big problem in our relationship. But it's amazing to me that I have this skill. I've had this experience of being able to look at all kinds of others' behaviors and logic. And when it came to my own life, I may have been entirely clueless.
Sadly, we have to wait for new episodes. We're on a little bit of a hiatus, but what can fans expect when The Irrational returns?
Well, what you can expect is things are going to ramp up in the overall investigation as to what actually happened to Alec. And what I'm imagining, because I don't ask too many questions myself, I kind of want to learn things the way the audience learns them. But what I'm imagining is there's going to be a reckoning in Alec's psyche about the trauma he'd gone through. I don't know how that's going to affect him. I'm looking forward to it because as an actor, these things are fantastic to play. So what I can tell you that is the overall arching story between me and my ex-wife, my students, my sister, all of those relationships are going to ramp up, and it's going to be fueled by this greater story.
I am looking forward to it. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of the show. I cannot wait to see what is coming next. But I mean, thanks so much for talking to me, Jesse. You were so fun to chat with.
Fantastic. So are you. Thank you so much.